Coming to you from an undisclosed location in the state of Fort Collins, a couple of guys talking about CSU, Fort Collins, and whatever else comes to mind. It's better than The Matrix Reloaded, not quite as good as Hot Shots Part 2. Here is the Ramsanity Show with your hosts V and Harris.
Hey, what's up, Ram Country? This is V.
And I'm Harris.
Welcome to another episode of the Ramsanity Show. What's up, Harris?
You know, I think I kind of stepped on your intro there for a second. I kind of cut you off pretty quick.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know, that happens from time to time.
You're excited to get into tonight's episode.
Yeah, you know, it's been a while since we recorded. We recorded the last week's episode about a week in advance, so it's nice to record one that's
You're not supposed to reveal that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell our secrets.
This is top flight amateur podcasting here. Yeah, you ready to get going, man? How was your week?
Yeah, it's been good, I think. What's today, Tuesday?
Yeah.
It's February already. I mean, This year's flying by. I like it.
February already? We're almost done with February.
I know. So, yeah, let's just jump in. So tonight, man, I'm really excited about this guest. The last time we had a guest similar to this, I thought it was a great episode, right? And it's cool to be able to interview these people and get them on and get a different perspective on the town instead of just CSU fans.
Well, the last episode we had with a guest like this, it was the day Steve Addazio was hired. So timing-wise, I mean, we booked him out 8 weeks in advance, and we nailed it to the day.
Did we fire somebody today?
No, we didn't.
Is that
thankfully?
Maybe he can make something up.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So this guy, I believe, also works with the last one, right? And we'll find out about that and talking to that. But this one, in no relation. Right. I'm sure you hear this a lot, but we have another Coloradoan reporter, Kevin
Lytle.
You
nailed it.
Thanks for coming. You know, I had it. I asked you before.
You psyched yourself
totally
out with the Kelly talk, and you didn't want to merge them.
Yeah. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. You're what we call a get in like our small little world. There's only so many like names we can bring on the show, and you're one of the names.
I'm pumped to be here. This is fun for me.
Well, and it's a little bit different media for you, right?
Yeah.
So you're a reporter for the Coloradoan.
Yep.
So why don't we just start from scratch? Tell us about yourself, where you're from, how long you've been around town, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Colorado in Conifer, a little outside Denver. Went to CSU. Worked at the last couple of years at CSU. I worked at the Collegian, the student paper there. Also did some CTV work, a little bit with KCSU as well. Got a job after school in Montana, was there briefly before one opened up here at the Coloradoan. Came back, have covered all sorts of things. I've kind of done a little bit of everything in the sports reporter realm at the Coloradoan. Been here like 7 years now, I think. The last 4 or so doing mostly all the CSU stuff. So yeah, it's really fun. It's exciting for me to be able to be here. Obviously, most people have lived in Fort Collins. I'm no exception. So I was really fortunate to get the job I have.
And when did you go to CSU?
I graduated in 2012.
Okay. Now, was that your dream? Like, you moved away, right? And did you have a vision of, hey, if something opens up, I'm going back to Fort Collins?
I mean, honestly, I kind of never figured it would happen. There obviously the amount of jobs, sports report jobs, there aren't a ton. And, you kind of just assume you'll move away, work there for a while, maybe move on. Obviously, if some came up, I would love to come back to Fort Collins, but I wasn't thinking, hey, in a couple of years, I'll be back here, and there's a lot less than that, really. So it was just good fortune and good timing, I guess, good luck, whatever you want to call it, that brought me back here.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's impeccable timing, because there's 4 guys-ish that cover the CSU beat?
Yeah, and exactly. There are not many openings for it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is incredible timing.
Yeah, I was very lucky.
Now, let's ask you this. I mean, obviously, you've landed in a pretty good job right now, right? You like writing for the Coloradoan, writing for CSU, right? What is your dream job, though? If you had one, do you have one?
Well, that's fine. People ask that with some frequency, and I don't think there's like one job like this, either paper or outlet or whatever, or covering this team. I have a lot of different ones, and I really enjoy the college sports. Big time college football or basketball would be fun. In a lot of ways, I think big time college basketball would be more entertaining. I'm also a big hockey and soccer guy. I covered the Eagles for the Coloradoan for a while. That was a blast, so covering the NHL would be really fun. And then the soccer side, I mean, especially with the growth of MLS and everything, there are potential opportunities there that I'd be interested in. So I don't have like a single one. There are kind of a lot of different like kind of genres, so to speak, that would kind of intrigue me. But like I say, I'm very blessed here as well.
Right on. Well, and it's funny because I did write that down because, Harris here doesn't get out of Fort Collins much. He doesn't.
Nope.
The only sport he watches is CSU, right?
Yeah.
Nothing else. So it's nice to have you on because I wanted to talk kind of where Colorado sports are right now, right?
Yeah.
MLB just started, right? So we got baseball starting.
Yep, spring training time.
And then the Nuggets are doing really well, right? So are you following those and the Avs?
Yep. So I'm like I said, a big hockey guy. Avs were kind of my first love from a sports standpoint growing up. The Broncos as well, but really the Avs. I was kind of at the impressionable age when they moved here. Obviously, won right away. The Sakic and Forsberg, those guys, were kind of my idols as a wannabe athlete growing up. So I certainly love them, follow them. Nuggets are a lot of fun. Rockies are incredibly frustrating right now, obviously. Hoping that somehow that ship can be righted. But yeah, I certainly kind of use my fan standpoint on a lot of those Denver teams, that we don't cover. I get to sort of enjoy them just from a sports standpoint.
Where do you fall on the Arenado versus Burdich situation?
Always the player, especially in that case.
Well, and so talking about, separating yourself a little bit, how do you do that as a reporter? So, I mean, you went to CSU, right? You bleed green and gold. How do you do that as reporting?
It's interesting. I think it depends on your personality. For me, it hasn't been that hard. Certainly some of my teams, I love my teams. I go, all in and support for them. But I'm able to, I guess, differentiate a little bit between kind of the blind fandom and reality, which, not everyone can. That's fine. And that's why sports are so great a lot of times. And, CSU is kind of an interesting one. People often ask that. I never would have considered myself a big CSU supporter, just not negative or anything. But I started at, working at the Collegian pretty young. And so you start going in that reporter mindset and you kind of just learn how to separate that and how to separate your job with the emotions of it. And not everyone can. I mean, that's what, occasionally I'll speak to a class or whatever and say, some people can't separate that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It just means you can go different avenues within the sports world. But for me, I'm able to do that and look at things, even things that, I'm really passionate about. I can still look at pretty black and white. Just that's my personality, I guess.
That's pretty beneficial, especially because, like this week, there were some calls made on the court, right, that we may or may not have went our way. And I don't know if I could do the same, right, to be able to keep my judgment out of it and be like, that ref was,
Oh, yeah, totally. And you see it from, some, quote-unquote reporters as well that can't necessarily control the emotion of that. Because, it is hard. I mean, we all watch the game, understand the game. I thought the same thing. There were some mighty questionable calls.
I believe the term you used was suboptimal.
Suboptimal. So you got to start on that. Okay, I was going to see how long we get into it.
Yeah.
But suboptimal was the right description for those, I think. But yeah, as a reporter, I'm able to just say, bad call. That's what it is. Whereas, the fan's standpoint obviously, absorbs that differently.
Well, and basketball is one of the rare sports where fans are literally all the way around the call and the referees aren't.
Yeah.
So even though the fans might see something, they might have a better angle than the referee in some cases because that's the way the cookie crumbles with how the referee alignment works and how the rotation has to work. But fans need to realize they just can't see everything for those three officials out there.
And basketball is an incredibly hard sport to officiate. It's very fast-paced. Obviously,
I've officiated maybe 8 sports in my life, and basketball is the most challenging.
Yeah,
by far.
It's really tough.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, I started officiating softball last summer, right? And, I mean, we run 2-man, and based on where you are, if you're out in the field, you don't always have that optimal angle, for if that play comes in and where the ball comes in, and it's kind of the same thing, right?
So, you don't have an optimal angle because you were out of position.
There it is. But no, I mean, I growing up, kind of my job as, like a high school kid, I reffed soccer and hockey, and same thing, like, you just you kind of realize that perspective of like, there are times you can't see it, and that's just the way it goes. And, fans don't like to hear that, but it's just reality. Yeah,
that's the thing with any sort of sport because we have actual officials and humans, and they make errors too, and, they try their best. They're not in it for anything other than to officiate a good game.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, none of them want any of us to know their name. That's a few of them do.
Yeah, I can think of a few.
I shouldn't have gone that far, but generally the majority hope that we all leave the stadium having no clue who was out there in the stripes.
Larry Spalding, I have my eye on you.
Maybe he listens. Maybe he's going to be mad at the Mountain West Tournament.
Oh, God. So when you were a student reporter, thinking back to that time, 8 years ago, is there anything you miss about your days of working in kind of that college media?
Oh, yeah, big time. The most, I guess, poignant in my mind is just kind of the camaraderie, tightness, the unique group that you can have to work with. And obviously at college paper, it can go up and down. There are times where there can be a great group and there are times where it can be a bad group, just the way it goes. I was fortunate to work with some unbelievably talented people at the Collegian at the time. And also, I mean, a group of them are, still my best friends, which is, again, just super fortunate. We were able to do some projects and things like that, you don't necessarily have the ability to do, in the job I'm in now because of, time or whatever. As a student, you can kind of make it work however you want to work. We had one where we kind of skipped class all week because that's what it took, and you can do that there. In my job, I can't just skip everything else all week anymore. But yeah, the camaraderie of it is really cool. I mean, we'd be in the Collegian newsroom, until midnight, 1 a.m. almost every night, which obviously sounds horrible now, but it was a lot of fun. We had good times down there.
I look back and I remember seeing a tweet about like the front page of the Collegian one day, and it was like you and Aaron Udell on the front page. Yep. I was like, well, just change the masthead, and it's literally from Collegian to Coloradoan, and that's what it was for that day or something crazy like that. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, Aaron sits 5 feet away from me at work. It's speaking of unbelievably talented people, she's one of them. So it's been fun for us to kind of get to work together.
We've got her on a potential guest list.
Aaron would be amazing.
Yeah. I remember when I first met you, I think you were interviewing me for something with Matt Stevens.
Yep,
like at the
some
same
club
time.
Sports thing or something or other.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. So it was such a flashback to like what that was.
I
was
know.
Like, wow, you guys are actually made it as reporters, and that's a hard thing to do, especially when like all of you are making that.
Yeah, I'm really, I guess, proud of some of the alumni, that Collegian alumni that are spread out throughout various media all around the country. From my time and times kind of around me. So it's definitely cool. It's there are a lot of people that go to college and have a frat or sorority or whatever. The Collegian is sort of the fraternity that I roll with.
That's pretty cool.
What would you say your favorite story you've ever covered is? We asked Kelly this, and he came up with some pretty cool examples. I'm sure you've got a couple that you're proud of.
There are definitely a lot that jump out. One from fairly recently, it was, I guess, about this time a year ago during spring ball. Max McDonald, the kid from Rocky Mountain High School, played at CSU, linebacker. He had missed a good chunk of the 2018 season. Kind of, there wasn't much out about it. And, I've written about Max and his family for years, and Max graciously was willing to open up about some of the mental battles he is having, some depression, some anxiety, anxiety attacks from everything that comes with being a student athlete. And I was just so honored that he was willing to share that, and it's such an important thing, the mental battles that these kids face, and it's kind of it's getting better, but still kind of stigmatized. And being able to share that was, really cool. And, hopefully impactful for a lot of people that, maybe deal with similar things that Max was dealing with at the time. So that's one that really jumps out recently.
Cool. Yeah, I remember that article. It was a really good story. Do you remember that, V?
I do not.
I will find a link for it and send it to you. What would you say is one of your biggest whoopses or misses as a reporter? Like when you made a call and you're just like, that was going to be a freezing cold take immediately.
Gosh, that's a good question. I try and be pretty smart and safe. I've had some smaller ones during the Wyoming basketball game. That's a smaller example that, it's not, it's fun to joke about. It's not like a huge embarrassing screw up, but, with 8-9 minutes or so to go, CSU was down like 16 or 19 at the time. And I tweeted something about how this is going to be the worst loss of the season, replacing Arkansas State. Obviously, CSU turned it around. I looked like an idiot. Many people jumped me on that on Twitter. I think it's mostly in good fun, and
we did
and that,
too.
Yeah, as you should. That's fine.
I was going to say we might need you to do that more often.
Someone did mention that and say, "Hey, if you hadn't done that, maybe then turn around." I said, "I don't think I have that power, but sure." So, that's kind of a smaller one. With the big stories, I try and be very, very careful. I mean, you mentioned the Steve Adazio hiring, which poor Kelly, what a long day that was. Luckily, we didn't have anything mayhem today. But you try and be really cautious through the coaching search and everything. And before that, with the Bobo removal, make sure you have everything 100% before you say anything. For instance, I was able to share that Butch Jones, they had negotiated with him, got basically a finish line, but then I was first to report that they had completely backed out. I knew that about 10 a.m., whatever day that was, I don't even know now. But I wasn't able to share it until probably about 2 because you need to obviously you don't want to get that one wrong. So I try and be really cautious with those, but man, with the way things are these days, it's really tough. It's really easy to say something that you feel is fine and then end up looking like a big idiot. I'm sure I have examples of mine out there and try and black them out. But it's a good point. I do try and be very cautious, with especially significant things that I had better be right before I put out, because consider a tweet national news is kind of my mindset.
Yeah.
So, Harris asked what was your kind of memorable story you've done, right? What would be, do you have a bucket list interview or team that you could,
That's a good question.
And it doesn't matter if it's like in right now or, 20 years ago.
Well, bucket list interview, and this would have nothing to do with my job, so it would never happen, or at least right now. Sir Alex Ferguson, legendary Manchester United manager. Many people would consider one of the greatest soccer managers of all time. Pretty fascinating character. He would be one that I would really love to talk to.
Good answer.
Yeah, I'd be super intimidated because he can tear reporters apart when he doesn't like their questions. So I'd be terrified of that. But that's one that'd be really, really fun for me. And man, stories all day. Just think of the stories that guy has from years and years and years. Right. So that's one.
Okay. If I were to say, I'm going to lock you in a cage with Nick Saban for 8 minutes, what are some questions you're going to try and get out of him? Because, boy, that's a tough interview, too.
Yeah, Nick Saban's one of those interesting ones that when he doesn't want to play the game, he doesn't play the game.
Yeah.
And honestly, why not ask him about that?
Yeah.
Where's this kind of combative mindset come from?
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't be a great start. I'd probably throw a couple softballs first. Talk about his family, talk about his upbringing or something to try and get him in a good mood. But it'd be pretty interesting to just kind of get his thoughts on really college football and its standing in the country, especially in the part country where he works. I'd be very fascinated because when you do get those glimpses of, I guess, a true human Nick Saban, it seems like he's a guy that's pretty world aware. He just doesn't show it very often. I'd be kind of interested to get his take on college football and where it stands and the impact it should or shouldn't have in communities like Tuscaloosa.
Nice.
That would be an intimidating one though, especially if we're locked in. I don't like that.
You're locked in an ultimate fighting cage.
Yeah, he's
drop
another
some
one.
on you.
He's one of those. He can just stare you. He doesn't have to say anything, and he might.
What would you say is the most memorable event you've covered while you've been a reporter on the CSU beat?
Probably. Actually, not probably. Definitely CSU. Tim Miles' last year going to the NCAA tournament, playing Murray State. Obviously, that game didn't go how CSU fans hoped, but that was really kind of a cherry on top of a whole turnaround. Obviously, Miles and crew, they had done so much, had been in such a horrible spot when they took over. And the year before, they kind of just missed the NCAA tournament. So to finally make it there was kind of just such a celebration, not just for him and the program, but so many fans that had gone through, the 0-16 and things like that. And then just selfishly for myself, being at that venue there at Louisville is unbelievable stadium. Kentucky was playing there with Anthony Davis, so I got to see Anthony Davis play. Jim Calhoun, UConn were there. A really good Iowa State team is a really good kind of regional to be in. So that was really fun, and I was a student at the time for that. And there are a lot of others, obviously, getting to go to Alabama and see that. The Arkansas game here, even though it didn't end up really mattering in the grand scheme, just a crazy game. Those are the type of ones that, the game itself didn't end up mattering that much, but what a blast to be a part of.
Awesome. Yeah, you want to move on, V?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Our CSU topic for this week, I will lead it in, I guess, V, because I'm ready for it. I'm kind of this pumped about it. Is let's talk about basketball. This is our CSU basketball supercast. We've gotten some feedback lately that we haven't talked enough about CSU sports, considering this basketball season we're having. I'm like, that's not really our jam every week, but this is the perfect time to talk.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of moved away. So before we relaunched, right, we were very, very sports radio.
Yeah.
And there's 1.5 million sports radio podcasts out there, right? And kind of we wanted to make sure that we kind of did a little bit more of everything, not just hardcore sports.
I love it. I love listening. It's Fort Collins life listening to you guys.
Yeah. But this is definitely one of those episodes that, we've got you on. We are in the depth of the season, right? We got 2 games left of the
Two games left right now.
Right?
We're recording on Tuesday night about 2 hours before the CSU San Diego State game. We're releasing after it, so if CSU shocks the world on tonight,
we'll just come back tomorrow and re-record.
Yeah, and then, you might be busy tomorrow.
And then we've got 1 game on Saturday.
Yes, Air Force.
And so... so we figured let's go ahead and just talk some basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do we got?
Let's, Kevin, talk through the season. Like, how's the season going for the team? How was it going compared to what your expectations were overall?
Yeah, I think there's some slight disappointment from fans of, 2 weeks ago, CSU was sitting number 2 in the Mountain West. They're probably going to end up number 6. So there's definitely a little bummer of dropping down. But overall, I think you have to look at this season as a success. I mean, I don't see how you can look as anything but with where they were, 2 years ago with the, kind of messy end to the Eustachy era. Obviously, last year was kind of a weird mix of you had some holdovers from the Eustachy era, some new guys for the start of the Medved era. It didn't all mesh, as you would expect. That's very normal for a coaching change. And now this year, all of a sudden, it's just clicking. You can see, not only is this year pretty good, but you can see a really bright future. But like one note that I kind of want to highlight, and I'll do, later this week in the paper, if CSU wins Saturday, that's 20 wins. Obviously, that's kind of a benchmark. CSU has only won 20 games 10 times in program history. So that's not a number that they reach very often. So you can't just brush that away and go, oh, we should have been better. That's a pretty good benchmark for CSU.
I'm going to stop you right there really quick, Kevin. So, Harris, let me ask you this, okay? So I know with the other Kevin, right?
Yeah.
We gave our predictions.
Uh-huh.
Was it conference predictions or overall predictions?
Overall.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I couldn't remember what it was.
Kevin had 16, and I think you had 17, and I had 20. So,
Aaron, looking real good.
Yeah,
aren't you?
I had my green and gold glasses on. This makes up for my bowl game for football teams. So.
Well, you win some, lose some. But that's pretty good. I think, I know.
So give us that stat again.
20 wins. CSU has done that 10 times in program history. Obviously, you play a few more games now than you used to. But still, even in the good year, the Miles years, some of the Eustachy years, it's not like CSU's winning 20 games every year. So that's a really impressive number.
And on top of that, I mean, look at our roster right now, right? Our starting 5. I mean, what do we have? Two
sophomores, two freshmen, and a senior.
Yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, and then you look at the bench.
Yeah.
Deshaun Thomas, freshman.
He killed it on Tuesday.
Well, I have a very hot take, and I don't care. I'm just some dude in my basement. But I think that the offense and the kind of scheme we play with Deshaun Thomas is more indicative of what we're going to see in the future. And I think Deshaun fits it a lot better than Nico does. Yeah,
I think right now what we see is like a hybrid of what Medved wants to play, but fitting for Nico Carvacho, which you have to do. I mean, Carvacho obviously is a great player. One of, if not the best bigs in CSU history. So obviously you're going to have to mold your offense, but I think you're spot on that Deshaun Thomas will fit a little bit more in with Medved's kind of perfect offense that he envisions.
It was fun to watch him the other day.
Yeah, he's got a great touch. I mean, I'm excited for what he could be, with some time to develop.
Well, and then you got this Chris Martin, right, coming off the bench, like you're saying.
Yep, he's played well.
He's been helping out tremendously. That's been great.
Well, Chris and Hiron really, kind of took the reins and kind of embraced their roles throughout the season, which was kind of surprising, considering they were both projected to be starters this season, and it hasn't worked out that way. But man, they are really embracing their roles and really doing well off the bench. And when Hiron comes in, I'm like, he's going to get his 2 steals right here.
His hand's unbelievable. I mean, he just jumps everything. He's one of the quicker defenders I've seen in a while.
and he's a quick, nice change of pace for what Kendall Moore is and Stevens are. Those two kind of
different
players.
type of players. Yep.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of lures Hiram Edwards into kind of getting some steals that he wouldn't otherwise get because the teams are kind of used to our pace with our other guards.
Yeah, well, he plays kind of like a hell, so like you just can't quite be prepared for. Obviously, at times that gets him in trouble. He has some turnovers because of that, but he also gets turnovers because of it.
Absolutely, yeah. How do you think we're going to do in the Mountain West tournament? We're coming into it. I think we have our seeding kind of locked in, barring some big upsets here or there. But
yeah, I mean, it sure looks like that 6th seed, barring, like you say, some surprise. Get Wyoming. You don't love playing a rival 3 times, honestly, especially with how Wyoming just played CSU up in Laramie. So they'll probably be slightly more confident than an 11 seed should be. But on the flip side, if you're CSU, you have to win that. No excuse to not win it. And then after that, most of these teams in the 3 to 6 range are, I would say, fairly even in a lot of ways. They can be really good, but they can also kind of fall flat in their face. We've seen every team in that 3 to 6 range do that. So I still think it's pretty wide open. Obviously, there would be some benefits to a bye, especially with a young team that, these freshmen haven't played this many minutes in their basketball lives. So, getting an extra day would be nice, but oh well.
But it isn't necessarily bad to be that 6th seed because you're on the opposite side of the bracket from San Diego State, a team you played the week before, which is kind of a scary game if you happen to play them in the semifinal. And honestly, if we're that 6th seed, we play the 3, which is looking like it's going to be Nevada or Boise, kind of in one of those two. And I like our odds against those two.
Those two are both interesting games. Nevada, obviously, the game down in Reno, CSU kind of looked lost, and that was still pretty early. That was January 1. They didn't play great. Came back here, obviously, the amazing game with Isaiah Stevens hitting the buzzer beater. So that'd be a great matchup. Obviously, Jalen Harris is a nightmare trying to defend. And then Boise, it's almost, you have no idea, because CSU played Boise the first week of December, and that's the only time. The CSU
in
team,
Boise.
In Boise, good point. In Boise, what a horrible start to Mountain West scheduling it was, playing San Diego State and at Boise. So CSU from early December and now, just completely different teams. So that would be a intriguing matchup that really you wouldn't know how to kind of guess it would go because both teams are very different from then.
Absolutely. I think CSU has just changed so much in that time.
Yeah.
And we have a whole new, starting couple guys, and it's going to look a lot different with how our kind of roster lines up now.
Now, let me ask you guys this, okay? I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, right? So, do you think, between the Wyoming game, the one right after that was at Utah State, right?
Yep.
We lost that one. We kind of just, like you said, we looked lost, right? We fell apart. Is that going to happen? Are we going to get it back together? Like, what are you guys thinking here?
They've definitely hit a little funk here in the last 2 weeks or so, and I do think part of that's kind of a freshman wall. I kind of hate that phrase, but you're relying so much on Isaiah Stevens and David Roddy, specifically, and then obviously the other couple guys. That teams are starting to, you have some tape on them. You've kind of seen how teams defend them, so you can throw different things at them. And then 2, just the mental and physical fatigue. Honestly, I think mental is maybe the bigger one right now. Of just it grinds on you. It's the college basketball season is long.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that. I think they're going to be fine, but you never know. It's hard to predict what will happen in Vegas. I mean, Adam Thistlewood shot 0 for last year in Vegas, and if you had told me Adam Thistlewood would ever shoot 0 for in a game, I would have been shocked.
Which is crazy because at the end of last year in the regular season, he was turning it on and driving to the hoop, and he was just doing really well, and then in the tournament, he just did nothing.
Yeah.
But again, you're playing in these arenas, right? You're playing every week, right? So what, 20, 30 games, whatever, right? But this tournament is a different thing, right? I mean, it is. I mean, how many fans go to that?
It depends on the school. If you're talking UNLV, San Diego State, New Mexico, I mean, if it was San Diego State, New Mexico in the finals, if that somehow worked out, there would be 20,000 people and it'd be a sellout.
Yeah, it's funny, the mix. I mean, CSU Boise last year in the first round, it's not empty, but there's not much atmosphere.
There's like 300 people.
Yeah, there's not much atmosphere, but then CSU Wyoming would be interesting because Wyoming sometimes travels, but probably not a ton this year with how bad they are. So that would probably be pretty flat. But then if you get, say, Nevada in the quarterfinals, that would probably be pretty lively because, folks from Reno, obviously not hard to to get
and
over.
then and it is at the Thomas Smack, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So that is UNLV's?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a home game, right?
Yeah, well, technically it's a neutral court because they have a different
bring
floor.
in the new floor.
Yeah, the floor they bring in, but it's the same arena. So, yeah, take it for what that's worth.
But, I mean, even like that, I mean, we have to talk about that really quick. The fact that UNLV just beat the only undefeated team
On the road.
I think that's the one matchup you know, in say quarterfinals, if you're CSU, you do not want UNLV because they're playing great right now. You don't want to play
they
them
just
in
killed
Vegas.
us there.
Yeah.
Thank goodness though, when you locked on the other side that 4-5 game, pretty much guaranteed.
Should be fine. But yeah, if you're a CSU, you wouldn't want that one.
No.
So who are our definite we don't want? Them, number one?
Them, obviously, San Diego State. If you're playing San Diego State, you want to be in the final.
And the same reason that, you know, it's going to be tough for us to beat Wyoming a third time is the reason I want Utah State, because I feel like
those games have been pretty solid. Yep.
Yeah, they have a little bit more experience than us with Merrill and Keita, sorry. But I think with the knowledge base between Smith and Medved, there could be some chance for an upset there.
Yeah, that's if you're making a semifinal, especially for CSU, you want Utah State.
Yeah, that's the better
Despite,
side.
I mean, they're really good and they're playing really well right now.
I'd also like somehow New Mexico to stay on the other side of the bracket because who knows how many tens of thousands of fans. It's like a New Mexican vacation there.
Well, and they're so hard to read anyway. They're so up and down with all their issues, we'll call it.
Yeah. You know, this team actually, I was thinking about this the other day, thinking back and trying to put my green and gold glasses back on. Not that they ever come off that often, but this team right now reminds me a lot of the 2003 team. You have a dominant, established big man, Matt Nelson, Nico Carvacho. There's some similarities there. Nico can run a little bit better than Matt could at that point.
Probably can
Too. Still. You had two really hot freshmen coming, starting up with Michael Morris and Shelton Johnson. And we obviously have those two freshmen here now with, I don't think there's really an athletic freshman like Michael Morris was, but I don't think those come around but once a generation anyways. But then you had Andy Burley and Brian Green, kind of those established kind of big guys. Those are the kind of Hiron Edwards and Chris Martin coming in. I was like, this team looks a lot like that one.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong. I think this team is maybe had a little better regular season than that 03 team did. I don't think these guys are going to go into Vegas, phased at all. I think that's maybe the biggest difference between this year and last year. Is I'm not sure last year's team really believed they could do a whole lot. I think by the end of the season, especially their confidence was pretty down.
I think what's really going to matter though is tonight, right? I mean, as long as we don't just get slaughtered tonight, right? But then Saturday. I mean, as long as we can easily win Saturday.
Saturday should be the perfect set pick-me-up game for getting ready for the tournament. You've got what should be an easy team to play and just destroy, but it's a rival, so they'll play hard. But we should be able to just come and clean the house on Saturday and kind of get ready for the tournament. I've got a really weird aluminum foil hat theory on my mind, and I want to run it by you. So right now, Minnesota is 13-13. I'm not sure if you've been following the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
A little bit, yep.
So they have Richard Pitino. Where did Nico Medved go to school?
I think it's Minnesota.
Yeah, and where did Dave Thorson, a high school legend?
Minnesota.
Yeah. Last year, Richard Pitino was on the hot seat, and one of the two names I saw mentioned, well, three names, one of them is out of it now, obviously, in Fred Hoiberg, was Tim Miles and Nico Medved. That terrifies me.
You're not the first one to mention that to me, and I don't think it's off base for you to be worried that if that were to open. I think Nico Medved generally would be happy to stay here and build this program and make it, great. And I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think he probably saw Tim Miles' struggles and said, maybe don't jump for any P5, but Minnesota, would be, I don't see him turning it down if they were to offer it to him, whether it's next year or 10 years from now.
Yeah, I think that's the one job he would jump for immediately, knowing how much he loves Minnesota.
And they look at it, he could take Dave Thorson with him. What have they done in Minnesota recruiting? Dave Roddy. Who did he pick CSU over? Minnesota.
Yeah.
The kid Jacob Jennison coming next year. He tore his ACL, so he'll probably have to redshirt next year. But he's from Minnesota. Guess who was sniffing around once they realized Dave Thorson was there trying to get him? Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think alumni there would probably be all over that as well. So we'll see, obviously, that we're connecting a lot of dots to get there, but Minnesota is definitely a job that if or when it were to ever open, that's a threat for Nico Medved.
My hope is that we're not quite there enough for Minnesota to say, hey, let's take a chance on Nico Medved at this point. Like, we're maybe a year away from them being like, oh, look at what he's done over here 3 times before.
Yeah, a certain point, especially for a Power 5, you need, obviously Medved in all his stops, the building looks really good, but for those jobs, you pretty much need to show, like, you've actually won, not are just getting really close to winning.
Absolutely, especially with how stacked that Big Ten is. I mean, they're 13-13 for a reason. If that Big Ten is a murderer's row of teams.
It's been a really weird season for the Big Ten this year. I mean, it's one of those things. I've been watching a lot of these games, and I mean, you just don't know who's going to win at any given time. Yeah,
it's a great league. There's a reason Tim Miles, he had some pretty decent teams, but it's just hard to string together a big season in that league.
Mm-hmm. And Tim Miles is out there, so maybe Minnesota will take a shot at him because I think that's a job he might have some interest in.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of the talk of Miles in Wyoming. I just can't see him going there because I think he would get a better job than that. No offense to Wyoming, but I think he would get a better gig, even though it would be mighty interesting to have Miles, Medved, and Craig Smith all in the same league again.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting. I've heard that from some Wyoming donors that they're really pushing, and Craig Bowl is really pushing with their connection.
Yep.
And I don't know if you listened to Tim Miles' podcast on that, but he's talked quite extensively about that connection.
Yeah, he definitely has, I would say, at least a little bit of interest there.
Yeah. You ready to wrap it up, Fee?
Yeah, did we have anything else basketball related?
You want to talk about crystal ball maybe for next year, what that might look like?
We could do that if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
I've had some of those discussions. That's kind of fun. So to me, your starting 5, obviously you lose Carvacho. You just slide Deshaun Thomas in there. So I think your starting 5 looks the exact same, other than that swap. Isaiah Rivera is the kind of curveball and the big addition. He's a kid from Geneseo, Illinois. Scores darn near 30 points a game, averages about 8 or 9 rebounds, about 4 or 5 assists. Super talented player. Everything I've seen, heard, read, talked to people about him is great kid, great athlete, great player, can do a lot of things. So he will be in the mix. I don't see who you would bump from the starting lineup. Maybe most naturally would be he could take Kendall Moore's place at the 2, but you're not taking Kendall Moore out of the starting lineup after starting 2 straight years. No. So I think he's kind of going to be your super sub 6-man that can score, a bunch of points off the bench. John Tonje is kind of one that I'm really interested to see what he does. To me, I think he can be Chris Martin, but with the scoring that maybe we thought Chris Martin would have when he came here. Tonje's a super athlete, super worker. He's a kid that in high school, his first couple years was basically nothing, and then his last year he led Nebraska in scoring. So really emerging talent, and then you're going to have to figure out a big. Obviously with Deshaun Thomas starting, that leaves a hole. James Moores is redshirting this year. I've talked to the staff, a pretty decent bit about him. They're pretty excited with the redshirt season he's had. Said he's maybe tougher than you would have anticipated. He has good touch. Watch him shoot. He can shoot a little bit. But obviously that's 2 young guys as your bigs, so that's a little bit of a concern. But bigs are hard to come by anywhere, so CSU's not alone in that. But I think that's kind of the place where you're at. Iggy Sargunis, I'm sorry, Iggy, if I pronounced that wrong, because I may have. Georgia transfer, he's a great shooter. I'll be interested to see where he gets in. And then PJ Bird and Tavion Kirk, kind of 2 guards, probably battling for that Hiron Edwards role. Probably one of them will get it. We'll see what happens. But CSU's going to be really deep.
I was going to ask, so do we have any not only transfers, but incoming freshmen that are kind of...
Yep, so Isaiah Rivera obviously will be a freshman. Sargunius is sitting out this year from transferring from Georgia, and Tavion Kirk is sitting out this year from transferring from Ohio. Jacob Jennison will also be a freshman. He tore his ACL, so he's probably out until about September. He's a 7-footer, long wingspan. Pretty good player, but if you're out till September hurt, you're probably redshirting, you would guess.
And we have one scholarship we're holding on to right now.
One
and I think they're holding on to it till next year because it seems like we're really heavy this year.
Yep. So there's one sitting out there that if
if
someone falls into their lap, they'll be able to take it.
Yeah, a 7-footer with the athleticism and size of Shaq falls into their lap.
Yeah, you might throw a scholarship at them.
Yeah. So it's like we're in a nice place right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, we're going to take a real quick break, guys, and we'll be right back with you. Okay, we are back. So we got kind of a different little Fort Collins-ish topic today. It's not specifically directed at Fort Collins per se, but more of just the area, right? And since we've got Kevin here, we want to talk about kind of just what your view on, especially as a reporter, right? I know, I mean, I'm a part of the Coloradoan Facebook page, and people complain all the time about, we got to pay a fee for the online subscription and all this, right? And I think that it kind of, because of technology and the internet and everything today, people's view is a little bit different with social media and everything. So how, because of, you worked at the Coloradoan, you work at the Coloradoan, right? Part of the USA Today, right? Yep. You worked up in Minnesota, you worked at the Collegian. How is that how have you seen that transition, and how's that affecting things today?
Yeah, it's definitely all changed, and all changes really fast. And it's kind of interesting, actually, sort of side note on this, but similar topic. I was down at state wrestling at Pepsi Center over the weekend, which means every paper from around the state is there. So it's pretty interesting for me to talk to, all sorts of different reporters, all sorts of different markets, and kind of how they handle this type of discussion. And it changes everywhere, for every community. It's a little different. For us, it's we have, you mentioned the complaints on Facebook, and obviously there are plenty of those people who love chiming in, and we really appreciate that. Love the feedback. But for Collins, we're pretty lucky. We have a really good kind of growing digital audience. Our online subscriptions continue to grow. Obviously, print is suffering throughout the country, but we're balancing that with growing our digital subscriptions, and that's our big push is the digital subscription. Anytime someone asks me about reading the paper or subscribing, things like that, I push them to the digital subscription because honestly, I love the print paper. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore the print paper. I love picking it up, reading it, seeing all the pictures and everything. There's something cool about it. But you get a lot with the digital subscription. You get all the same stories. Everything that we write goes online. There are plenty of things that we write that don't end up in the paper, whether it's just a quick update that, wouldn't make sense to end up in print or whatever. You get, photos, big photo galleries, videos, all sorts of things. Erin, you mentioned she's bringing her podcast back, the Podcast, which is a pretty cool thing. So there are a lot of different things you can get, and it's cheap too. I mean, people love, whining and complaining, but the reality is it's very affordable. So, it's kind of a constant conversation.
Well, it's funny because we had our Coloradoan physical paper because years ago, because then it paired with the digital one, right? And we really only got it so we could get the Thanksgiving paper, right?
With the coupons and everything,
right? Yep. And then finally we were like, you know what? It just sits. I mean, we had all these newspapers piling up, and, the newspaper man would throw it over, 4 houses down, and I was like, is this your guys' or ours or what? And so it was funny because we finally just canceled that, and we really just use the online subscription now. And it's great because like you're saying, I mean, I've got my, newspaper right here holding in my hand, and I've got hundreds of pictures of whatever just happened.
Yep. I mean, from the sports standpoint, look at it. You guys come to a game. We probably tease each other on Twitter, interact there.
Yep.
You leave the game, and as you're sitting in traffic or sitting in your car or whatever, you pull up your phone, you can read what I wrote about the game and then look at, 30 photos from the game. And that's all before you got home.
And by doing the digital edition, you're not worried about, you as a writer aren't worried about getting cut for space. Like, we're cutting paragraphs for space, and you can write as much as you want to and wax poetic about a game that just took place.
Well, so let me ask you this. How has that changed too, right? Because like he's saying, I guess I wouldn't have thought about that per se, right?
Yeah, no, Aaron's
but
spot
so
on.
like the Collegian, you probably had, you only have this little amount of space to fill. So how is that different for your reporting style now?
No, it's spot on. I remember at the Collegian, it would have been probably February of 2012, CSU played UNLV, had the big comeback, beat UNLV at Moby. That kind of sort of clinched their at-large bid. We went back to the Collegian newsroom, kind of bullied our designer into saying, we're going to scrap the front page, make a poster front, write the story. But with that story, I don't know now, but X amount of inches is kind of the measurement we use. And I had to, in my story, make sure hit that, or else you basically just cut from the bottom. So you kind of write to fit exactly that hole, which isn't always going to lead to the perfect piece. Not that I ever write the perfect piece, as you guys know.
The story you wanted to tell.
Yeah, exactly. But now I don't think about that at all. I'm able to write whatever the story needs, and
you go until
sometimes that's very short. There are times where you just don't need a ton. And in the old days, it'd be like, well, this doesn't fill the hole, so you need to lengthen it out, which just leads to garbage. It means you're writing bad stuff just to fill a hole. And then there are other times, like I say, where you want to go a little longer. The game deserves, or whatever the story is, deserves a little longer, and you couldn't. So now I'm able, I don't even remember the last time I had a conversation with editors about how long a story should be. And that used to be very frequent. You want 10 inches, you want 18 inches, 30, this is feeling long, I might need 30 inches. Oh, I'm not sure we have 30 inches, let's go 25. I don't remember the last time I had that conversation. So it makes it a lot better that you can just write what's needed, but then we have the digital metrics that can show if people agree with us. We can look at, okay, you thought that it needed to be this long, but our metrics show that people bailed out halfway through. So
it literally says, because I do that all the time, and not necessarily just but
only on your stories. You never does it on Kelly's stories.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. I'll look at a headline, I'll read a little bit about right, and then I'm reading, and I'm like, I don't need to keep reading.
Well, that's the way we all are. I mean, I do that with stories too. There's somewhere I'm like, okay, I got what I needed or wanted, or flat out, I'm just.
But that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that.
So so every story, it's called average engage time. It tells you how long people read on your story. And so, if I write a real short one, it'll be a smaller number because obviously it doesn't take as long. But if I write that Max McDonald piece we were talking about earlier. That was a pretty long piece. So if that had a really low number, I'd be worried, oh man, I didn't do it right because people were bailing out. But if it has a big number, that means people were reading it. So you still have to pay attention to that. But we actually know, in the old, print evaluation, you don't know. Did people read the first 3 paragraphs and throw the paper away, or did they read the whole thing?
Or just like us, right? It just stayed in the bag
exactly.
and we threw it away.
We didn't know, but now we can actually analyze if people are reading it, how much they're reading it, all that jazz.
How much does that affect what kind of stories you write?
Huge. Everything. Okay. I mean, every conversation about coverage is based on basically, do people care, frankly?
It's funny that you mentioned that average engage time, because we actually do have a metric like that for our podcast as well. And ours is at 30%. 30% listen, and then they turn it off.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's...
It's the guest interview, and then they just don't care about the rest.
Pretty much.
Because our show is
Stick with us, people. It's too late. We should have talked about this.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
They'll never hear it.
They've already bailed.
Yeah. Because our show is roughly 20 minutes. So, yeah. Sorry, guys.
But no, I mean, those are conversations we have all the time. And, it can be frustrating sometimes. Why didn't this hit? It should have. And then other times it's all right.
You're like, if you just read a little bit further, you would have seen the punchline.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's good. I mean, it helps you as a writer because it's okay, I can be grumpy and blame the readers, or I can look at what I wrote and try and figure out why it was bad.
That's pretty
frankly.
Cool. That is really cool to hear that and see that. So let me ask you this too. So I know you're on Twitter. So how much of what you do, I know your articles most obviously are all in the Coloradoan kind of that thing, right? But how much of what you do is on Twitter then too? And versus news versus your personal thoughts, how do you differentiate that kind of thing?
Yeah, pretty good amount. I mean, I enjoy Twitter, as you guys probably see and get annoyed about. I have fun with it. I think it's, especially in sports, I think it's a really cool interaction thing. I'm able to kind of get to know a lot of, CSU fans, even if I haven't maybe even met them in person. We kind of feel like we know each other a little bit. So I really love the conversation of it. So I use it to share news, certainly, especially at important times. But during games, I don't want to tweet, it's 13-10, 4 minutes in, so-and-so has 4 points. Because you're all either at the game, or if you're not, you're just scrolling on the Gamecast on your phone.
If not the social media intern for the basketball team,
exactly.
We'll be doing that exactly.
So there are a billion ways you can find out the hard details. Obviously, when it gets a really important time, I will, because that's news, so to speak. But I like game Twitter to be a lot more interactive, conversational, analytical. Try and break down why CSU's down 5 right now, rather than just they're down 5.
One of my favorite things about Twitter, especially with sports Twitter, is away game Twitter when it's a game like tonight where you just know no one's at the San Diego State game who you're going to follow, and you know everyone is watching the game, and you're all watching along with it at the exact same time, and it's basically you're at a sports bar with 30 people you don't know screaming at the same TV.
Yeah, it's always fun. I really love that interaction part of it, and it's fun for me to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, V, you should really get on Twitter more often.
I'm trying a little bit, right? I actually had a super super geek moment today. I started rewatching Survivor from season 1, and I tweeted about it. Survivor actually commented back and was chatting with me today.
There you go.
I was like mind blown. That is awesome.
That's good interaction from Survivor.
Right? Yeah,
that's smart.
That is deep.
That's another thing. That annoys me when people refuse to interact on Twitter. Like reporters or whoever just refuse to interact. It's like, come on, that's the point of the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you build an audience. Like when Matt Stevens left and kind of covering Colorado, I still follow him because occasionally he'll tweet something funny or something. I know Matt. He does a great job. And I'll still follow him even though I don't care really about North Carolina sports and news.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I enjoy it. It's fun to, like I said, get to know people that even if maybe I've never met them, and then we'll see each other at game. Hey, Kevin. Hi.
However, our guest next week is someone on Twitter, and I can spoil it for you because you don't know who he is, V, but Nate Haas from Crazy Carl's. That'll be a fun interview because he can rile some people up.
Yeah, I know Nate. I've gotten to know him a little bit. He way back in the day when I was covering a lot of high school stuff, he was an assistant basketball coach in town.
Really?
So I got to know him doing that a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, so he's our guest next week, so that'll be a fun conversation about his views on Twitter because I think he's got some...
He is on Twitter, yeah.
Yeah, he is strong on Twitter. So yeah, that's
You don't say.
Yeah. Yeah, some of our other guests love him.
So yeah, do we got anything else?
No. Yeah, you want to kind of move on to the next subtopic here?
Yeah, is there one more?
Yeah. Kevin, you want to tell us and kind of wrap up with your favorite CSU memory or story? Kind of close us out.
Yeah, it's a good one. I've been hearing you guys asking other guests about that, and kind of think of it. There are a lot. I'll go all the way back, kind of the start of our conversation, the Collegian days, just because of the good buddies I have there and how it started almost. So I was at the Collegian. Matt actually hired me. And then he had graduated. I'm trying to remember the whole timeline. Doesn't really matter. Chris Tiller had become the sports editor. I was his, I guess, technically assistant sports editor, which I think was a made-up title to get me more money, if I remember.
You got 30 more cents an hour?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I was breaking the bank. But so me and Chris had become pretty tight kind of the year before. And we had decided this was my last year at the Collegian, and we wanted to do something really cool. And before that, we just wanted to travel games, especially as a student. Like that's kind of the mecca of like travel to cover things. Like you get to see different places, get to see road games. Like that's really cool, and it's still really cool. So we've been like, okay, football season. Let's look at this. Okay, Logan, Utah. That's one we can go to. We can drive there. So we decided to drive, but we want a photographer. Well, there's this young kid, maybe freshman, maybe sophomore, who had shot 1 or 2 games for us, really talented. So we're like, we're just taking him. We're not really going to make it an option. So we basically kidnapped him and brought him. His name's Hunter Thompson, which is kind of ironic for journalists. So we kind of kidnap Hunter, take him. We didn't know him that well at the time.
Did you guys get pulled over and his parents were like,
no,
we've been searching for you?
I do remember, I think his mom called and he's like, I'm in the middle of Wyoming with some guys from the paper driving to Utah. I'm not sure she even knew. We're like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But ended up, Hunter became one of our best friends. I was in Hunter's wedding a couple years ago. But on that trip, we decided, like, hey, we need to keep doing this. Like, let's find ways to keep conning the Collegian into helping pay us travel at road games. But, like, we need to come up with some other, and we're just covering a game. That's pretty baseline. So, like, we need to do a cool project. So we decided we wanted to do a week in the life of a student athlete, show what that's like. So we went, man, we made a whole pitch to CSU about why they should give us this extra access. We were able to talk them into it. So we went to Vegas the athlete they kind of connect us with was Raymond Carter, the running back. So we spent like a full week following him. We went to classes, we went to practices, we went to his house. He was so sick of us. But it's the same. We took Hunter, we kind of kidnapped Hunter, made him part of this. When they were playing UNLV was going to be kind of the end of the trip, and so we did that. I forget exactly. We weren't going to fly because of costs. So we were going to drive, kind of like a 12-hour drive, I guess, roughly. But we couldn't go. One of us, it must have been Hunter, because me and Chris would just blown off a test. Had a test in like the afternoon, so we couldn't leave Fort Collins until like 5 p.m. or something. So we basically drove overnight to Vegas, got there the morning, I guess you would say, we got there. We didn't have a hotel because we knew we wouldn't be getting there till then. So we kind of just went wandering the strip at like 3, 4 a.m. as we got there. We're dead tired because we just driven all night. Ended up finding out a buddy of ours was there, kind of crashed on the floor of his hotel for a couple hours, like 2 hours, until we had to get up and start going to work and finishing this project. But it ended up really cool. The project ended up really fun. I look back and obviously there are things we would change, but we were able to get some attention from some legit media sources for it. I think it helped both Chris and I get jobs. Like say me, Hunter, and Chris, and Greg Mees was the guy that designed the paper. We're all best friends. We've been in, their weddings and everything. So really cool kind of mixture of some really fun journalism and just like a random meeting of people that have ended up becoming some of my best buddies. So yeah, that's going to be one of those it's not even really fully journalism, but just such a fun time, such a cool event for us to, like I say, we're basically conning our way into going on road trips, and it worked out pretty well for all of us, I think.
Those are the stories from college that I think everyone kind of has, or we kind of wish they had at that point. I've got a few of those myself, but man, those stories are like what you live off of. Like, oh yeah. And
that's why when you're asking about, kind of missing the college media days, that's the type of stuff that, it's hard to recreate that, because especially right now, if you told me to drive all night to Vegas and then just keep working all the rest of the next day, I'd be like, no.
No, I had a friend book a flight to the Mountain West tournament yesterday, and it was $64 round trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, I'll fly. Yeah, thank you.
But no, and that was a lot of fun. Great guys, fun project to do, and so all that combined for a pretty memorable student media experience.
That's great. That's fun.
Yeah. You're going to Mountain West next week. Yep. Are you planning on eating anywhere fun while you're there? I know you're kind of a foodie when you want to be.
Yeah, there's actually, I'm trying to think in Vegas. The problem is everything's so darn expensive. That really hampers me in Vegas. So the couple things that I know I'll do, I always, just try and walk the strip just because it's amazing people watching. Love that. I'll probably go over In-N-Out. I don't even think In-N-Out's that amazing, but when in Rome. And then last year, actually, me and kind of the Colorado media group that was there, we went to Top Golf, which was fun. And that's actually kind of affordable. But I don't actually have a food place. We'll just follow up the student media trip. So at the end of it, we had covered the game. We had kind of finished everything we needed to for the project. We weren't going back till the next day. It's like, all right, guys, let's go celebrate. Hunter wasn't even 21 at the time. So we didn't want to go to places that would leave him out. That would be kind of a jerk move. But we're wandering around let's go into the Bellagio. We walked in. We're like, let's go, get some food, hang out at the Bellagio, again, to say we did. So we go to the Bellagio. I think I got waffles at 1 a.m. I think I got waffles and Bud Light. They're like, these kids, holy cow. And it's the three of us. Our server, not to stereotype, but looked like a serial killer. Had the hair slicked back, was very serious and super scary, intimidating. So at the end, we all had our waffles and Bud Light or whatever we were eating. And he goes to bring us a check. We go, we're 3 college kids. Can you split that? He stands up real straight, goes, that would be very time consuming and require a manager. I'm like, what? The person at Chili's can split a check. You can't do it at the Bellagio? But we were not going to argue, so I think I ended up paying for that. But maybe I should go back to the Bellagio, get some waffles, go with some buddies, and make them split the check this time.
That's great.
Nice.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We got anything else?
I said I would read the latest social media or our latest review if somebody left us a review, and someone did. So you want to give our guest his gift, and I will cue that up.
Yeah. So Kevin, we want to thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We always, as you know, give a gift to our guests.
You guys are great hosts.
So because it's February and Valentine's Day month, we got a special beer from our friends at Grimm Brother. They do it every year. So it's the Bleeding Heart Edition Baltic Porter beer.
All right.
So there you go.
Awesome.
Enjoy.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. It was a blast coming on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, and don't forget to go out, rate, review, and subscribe. And here's our latest review. I'm not sure who this is, V, but you and I can probably kind of figure this one out. Nice show is the title. It was fun to join the guys and discuss FOCO and CSU. Weekly listener from GUJ35. So it says it kind of alludes to the fact they were a guest on the show, but I'm not sure who it was.
Yeah, I don't know what those initials. We'll have to go back and look through the archives.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thanks, guys. As always, I'm V.
I'm Harris.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Go Rams.
If you enjoyed this podcast, go ahead and subscribe on iTunes and give us a review. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Ramsanity Show and Twitter at Ramsanity Show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.